Hello and welcome everyone to our session today. Today's discussion is on rules of procedure, and we are going to be looking at the rules, getting ourselves ready and prepared to fully participate in the World Conference discussions and voting. So we hope that today you ask any questions that you had. If you've looked at the document and have any queries, please ask any question so that by the time we get to our World Conference session, you are very well prepared to fully participate. Thank you so much to all member organizations who have been part of our series of sessions that allow you to prepare for World Conference. We've had sessions on motions, on written resolutions, on bidding, and all of these allow us to really get familiar with what is being presented, what will be discussed, and so that you and your delegation can be prepared to fully participate and make decisions that will benefit girls and young women everywhere. Today's session will be hosted by Amy Porteous and Candela Gonzalez, sharing what the rules of procedure will be for this particular World Conference, giving you ideas on how rules of procedures are beneficial and can actually be adapted locally so that it ensures that you are following guidelines and have structure to your governance activities, and participation is understood by all who are present. So I would like to invite Amy and Candela to begin today's session.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone. Hola, hola a todas. Mi nombre es Candela González, soy la actual vicepresidenta de la Asociación Guías Argentinas.
And I'm Amy Porteous from Girl Guides of Canada, and I'm on the procedural team for the World Conference.
Bueno, la idea de hoy, como bien explicaba Cindian, es poder conversar y tener un intercambio entre todas acerca de las reglas de procedimientos a ser aplicadas en nuestra próxima conferencia mundial virtual. La idea es que nos podamos familiarizar con estas reglas y comprender por qué son importantes y útiles, y también que como organizaciones miembros comprendamos y las entendamos como una herramienta para usar en nuestras instancias de gobierno. Pero como somos guías, las queríamos invitar primero a hacer un breve juego, en el cual pueden ingresar a través del siguiente link, que está en el chat. La idea es que se sumen a través de ese link, o que pongan esta página de internet que aparece ahora en la pantalla, con este código que es el 649701. No sé si puedo ver cuánta gente. 8 participantes. La idea es conocer y saber un poco más, y después ya empezar la conversación sobre el tema que nos convoca, pero no queríamos dejar de relajarnos un poco y jugar un momento con ustedes. Somos 12, 15... Amy, ¿te parece que arranquemos? Cuando vos me digas, pongo iniciar. Somos 16. Ingresan con esta página y el código es el 649701. Bien, iniciamos, creo que se pueden sumar en una vez que ya lo inicie pueden seguir registrándose con ese link que apareció abajo. Bueno, somos todas nosotras. Ah, viene rápido. Ya estoy llegando al final. Muy bien. Bueno, estos son los resultados de nuestra encuesta. Nuestra primera conferencia mundial se llevó a cabo en el año 1920 en UK. ¿Cuántas conferencias habían participado? No tenía respuesta correcta, obviamente. Ahí va. La tercera es cada cuánto se realiza la conferencia mundial, y la respuesta correcta era cada 3 años. Y sí, esta era la primera vez que usábamos las reglas de procedimientos, y tenían que contestar verdadero o falso, y bueno, estuvo muy bien. Ahora sí podemos movernos para la presentación. Bueno, como les dijimos, la idea era hablar un poco de las reglas de procedimiento y conocer acerca de este documento, que es una herramienta que nos va a facilitar la toma de decisiones y va a garantizar que los procesos sean transparentes y se decidan democráticamente. Estas reglas están siempre en concordancia con nuestro estatuto y las ratificamos en la conferencia junto con la presidencia, el equipo de presidencia de la conferencia, el equipo de procedimientos y las escrutadoras, lo que las hace legítimas y reconocidas por todas nosotras. Va a ser la primera vez que vamos a tener una asamblea virtual, una conferencia virtual mundial. Todas somos nuevas en esto, entonces siéntanse libres, vamos a tener un espacio para preguntas. Muchas organizaciones miembros ya fueron, bueno, obviamente ya pasó el tiempo, designamos nuestras delegadas y nuestras observadoras. En esta conferencia vamos a tener delegadas, va a haber una delegada titular y otra delegada por país, y van a tener la posibilidad de concurrir 10 observadoras. Es decir, que en total una organización miembro puede conformar una delegación de 12 personas. Las observadoras van a tener el rol de asistir y ayudar a la delegada en su función, y estar presente en alguno de los momentos de la conferencia, que después vamos a explicar bien cómo es cada uno de esos momentos.
All right, so why don't we get to the content of what most of the sessions at the World Conference will be about, which is motions and amendments. This is, of course, the substance of the conference. So a proposed motion is any suggested proposal that is open for discussion at the World Conference. And for the most part, these have been provided in advance and circulated to the delegates and had delegates in advance. A proposed amendment is a suggested change to a proposed motion. And these two you should have received in advance, though there is a possibility that some will come forward later. If you are looking for the motions and amendments that were proposed in advance of the conference, you'll find them in document 3B, which was circulated about 60 days ago. Now, of course, that raises the question, can you suggest a motion, or can a member organization suggest a motion during the conference? Yes, it's not too late, but only if the motion does not relate to WAGS's constitution and bylaws, the policy and standards, triennial policy, membership, or general financial policy. That's because those motions are required by our constitution to be circulated well in advance. They have already gone out, so it's too late to make a new proposal on those, but other topics are doable. And the same is true with respect to amendments. Amendments can be proposed during the conference, but not to the constitutional motions, because of course that would change the content of the constitutional motions, which need to be circulated in advance. It's important to remember that any amendment suggested either prior to or at the conference has to be very clear, has to not entirely change the meaning of the motion, and should just add to or clarify the motion or make it a little bit different rather than making any sort of attempt to defeat it. And if you wish to have any motions or amendments circulated in advance of the well, I shouldn't say in advance. If you wish to have any motions or amendments added to the conference agenda, it's important that they be sent to the procedural team at proceduralteam@wags.org by 3 p.m. UTC on July 27th, which is the beginning, really, first day of the conference. So we realize there may be some amendments and motions that come up during the actual conference, but ideally, if your MO has any plans to make a motion or amendment, we would like to know in advance by 3 p.m. on the first day of the conference. And also we ask that we'd like to remind each MO that we are working under time constraints having this virtual World Conference, and it is our first time doing a virtual World Conference. So just please keep in mind the possible complications that might occur if you're deciding to submit a new proposed motion or proposed amendment. You're welcome to do so, just keep the context in mind. We're hoping that the conference will go as smoothly as possible. Something that is important to know in terms of the rules is how the motions and amendments will be proposed and discussed. So during each discussion of motions and amendments, first the proposer of that motion or amendment will present it to the group. So it might be the World Board, or it might be a member organization that will be invited to present their motion to the group. And that is an opportunity for the mover to provide the rationale behind the motion and the impact that they hope it will have. And they have 3 minutes maximum to present their motion. So please keep that in mind if you are your MO's presenter. You have a maximum of 3 minutes to explain why delegates should vote for your motion. If some of the motions are being co-sponsored with 2 or more MOs, member organizations, joining together to jointly make a motion, in those cases, they still only have 3 minutes. So the member organizations should discuss and agree among themselves who will present the motion on behalf of the group. And so after that occurs, the mover has the 3 minutes, and then the World Board, if it is a member organization that is presenting, the World Board speaks first, and a World Board representative will have a few minutes to respond. And then the chair of the conference will open the matter for discussion. And during the discussion, each member organization can only speak once on each motion or amendment. And again, it will be for a maximum of 3 minutes. So please give some thought in advance to what you would like to say on each motion so that you can keep what you have to say to that time window. You will need to use the platform to raise your hand to request to speak. And then the chair of the conference will invite you onto the screen. And please, if the chair tells you your 3 minutes are up, please stop speaking. And the chair will, of course, also declare when the discussion has ended and we need to move on to the next topic. There are a few different types of votes. So, Candela, would you like me to go on, or is this the point at which you wanted to take over?
Ok, thank you. Hay diferentes tipos de votos. Para que se comprenda fácilmente, hay 2 tipos de mociones, aquellas mociones que van a afectar a nuestro estatuto y reglamento, que son las que en el booklet de mociones identificamos con el número del 1 al 10, y aquellas mociones que no van a hacer cambios a nuestros estatutos y reglamento, que son las mociones que van del número 11 a la número 23. Cuando se dan las sesiones de votación, que bien explicó Amy, al votar sobre las mociones y sobre las enmiendas, las delegadas van a poder elegir entre 3 opciones: votar a favor de esa moción o de esa enmienda, votar en contra o abstenerse. Abstenerse significa que no quieren expresar su opinión respecto del tópico del cual se está votando. Respecto de las elecciones para las candidatas al Consejo Mundial, se va a poder elegir 6 candidatas de las 14 que hay dentro del booklet, que también fue circularizado, y las delegaciones, las delegadas que van a llevar el voto de sus delegaciones, van a poder alocar 6 votos entre las candidatas que se van a encontrar en la lista. Pueden alocar 6 votos, pero también pueden alocar menos votos si es que así lo desean. Algo importante es que si en caso de alocar más de 6 votos, es decir, que por error aloquen o seleccionen 7 u 8 votos, se va a contar como un voto nulo, su voto no va a ser válido. Así que pedimos a las delegaciones que por favor tengan mucho cuidado a la hora de la elección del Consejo Mundial para seleccionar los 6 votos, o menos que por supuesto quieran usar, pero que nunca sean más votos para que su voto sea contado dentro de la votación. Para la votación, para elegir la próxima sede de nuestra conferencia, se van a seleccionar entre las 4 opciones que escuchamos esta mañana que hay disponibles, y en caso de que ninguna de esas 4 opciones logre obtener una mayoría simple, es decir, que logre más del 50% de los votos, se va a realizar una segunda ronda de votación con aquellas opciones que tuvieron la mayor cantidad de votos en la primera vuelta. Hay que tener en cuenta también que respecto de estos 2 tipos de mociones que tenemos, es decir, aquellos que generan modificaciones en nuestros estatutos y reglamentos, las mayorías para ser aprobadas es del 75%, y para aquellas mociones que no generan cambios en nuestro estatuto y reglamento, la mayoría por la que son aprobadas estas mociones es de una mayoría simple. Los miembros plenos votamos en todas las sesiones de votación, y los miembros asociados votamos únicamente en las mociones que no afectan a nuestra Constitución y en la selección de la próxima sede para nuestra próxima conferencia mundial. Siempre el orden de votación para cualquier moción es primero votar la enmienda propuesta que tenga esa moción, la enmienda o las enmiendas propuestas que esa moción tenga, para luego seguir con la moción. En caso de que la enmienda sea aprobada, va a ser incorporada al texto original en caso de que la moción sea aprobada, y en caso de que la enmienda no sea aprobada, se va a pasar directamente a votar a la moción original propuesta tal cual estaba. En el siguiente cuadro vemos con mayor claridad acerca de, en el siguiente ahí vemos exactamente cuáles son los tipos de votación. También hay votaciones que se dan por consentimiento general, es decir, las primeras partes de las sesiones de apertura, la presidenta de la conferencia va a llamar a un consentimiento general, y si no hay ningún tipo de oposición, se va a dar por aprobada esa moción. Algo importante sobre la elección de las integrantes del próximo Consejo Mundial que no mencioné es: aquellas candidatas que obtengan los 6 mayores puntajes van a ser las integrantes que van a conformar el Consejo Mundial, y las personas que queden en el 7º puesto y en el puesto número 8 van a ser las personas aprobadas. Luego va a haber una nueva sesión de votación y final para ratificar tanto las personas aprobadas como las nuevas integrantes del Consejo Mundial, donde se va a ratificar esta decisión.
All right. Me again. Hello. Maybe actually, instead of going straight to this Girl Guides of Canada case, maybe this would be a good time for me to show you a little bit about how to vote on the platform that we're going to be using at the World Conference. So I will share my screen and go do a sample vote. But now, can you see my screen yet?
Yes,
great.
email.
All right, so on my way to Events Air, which is the platform that we will all be using for the World Conference. You may have already attended an orientation session about Events Air. If you haven't, I think there will be some more next weekend, at least focusing on voting. So I would recommend that you attend, but I will just show you the very basics about voting now. And of course, the conference is not happening right at this moment, so it is not exactly the same. But when you are in a session in Events Air, you will see on the right side of the screen here, or sometimes at the bottom right, a tab here that says Session Information, like this one. And to vote, you need to click there, which will open up a list of all the motions that are being voted on in the particular session. And when you are told it's time to vote for motion 1, for example, you will click on what will be labeled as motion 1, and you will be taken to a separate page. And if you were a head delegate, you should have received by now some login info for this separate page. And You will need to log in there, so there will be plenty of time to vote. And then you will see something like this that gives you, in all 4 official languages, the choices to vote for, against, or abstain. And something important to remember is that abstaining, if you abstain, your vote will not count at this conference towards the overall total. It is as though you had not voted. So you will pick one of your choice. You will click submit, which I'm not going to do now in case, because there is no session on, I don't want to confuse the system. But when you click submit, you should get a message that says thank you, and that will show that your vote has been registered successfully. And you can then exit and go back to the session. Now that is an example of a vote, of a typical vote where the choices are for, against, or abstain. You've just heard from Candela that there are some other options as well. For example, you might have something like this, where, for example, if we were voting on the different the countries that are bidding to host the World Conference, you might be asked to select your preferred option among a variety of choices instead of just for, against, or abstain. But the process is the same. Just pick one, click submit, and you should be good. Similarly, let's see if we can pull up one more. Here we are. This is about a very important one that this is much like what you will see when it is time to vote for up to 6 World Board candidates. You will be asked to select 6 of the below options. You will be able to click up to 6, so you can vote for between 0 and 6 people. But as Candela said, no more, or else your vote will not be counted. Or at least, well, yes, will be counted as an abstention. So you pick your 4 or 5 or 6 choices, and then down at the bottom, you will see the submit button. We'll give it a try, see what happens. Okay, and you'll see that you'll get a thank you. As long as you see that, it is all good. You can close and go back to the session. Good luck. And now, this has been a very sort of quick overview of rules of procedure, the most important rules of procedure that you'll need to know for the World Conference. You can, of course, read them and should read them all if you're going to be at the World Conference in document 1B that has been circulated. But rules of procedure aren't only useful at World Conferences. It's often very helpful to use them at other sorts of meetings as well, including meetings for your MOs. I remember that I spent some time on the Girl Guides of Canada Board of Directors a few years ago now, and I was elected as the Deputy Chief Commissioner Governance, which meant that I was being brought to the board while working as a lawyer, in part to be sort of an expert on how governance worked, how to interpret rules, how to help write rules, and how to make sure they were followed properly. So I remember being very nervous for my first meeting, thinking, well, I'm going to be, if there are any problems arise at the actual meeting, it's going to be me that people look to know how to resolve them, what the rules of the meeting are. So I asked in advance, can I get a copy? What rules of procedure do we follow? And it turned out I asked a person who had been on the board for the last 3 years, and she looked at me and she whispered, no one really knows. And as it turned out, there was certainly a perception that there were rules of procedure in place, and perhaps there were, but nothing that was officially recorded, nothing There are, of course, various sort of systems of rules of procedure. Robert's Rules of Order is quite common, at least in the English-speaking world. Roberta's Rules of Order, but it seemed that the organization had sort of melded the two a little bit and was working on its own sort of set of rules, but which had never been clearly defined. And it wasn't really a problem. Things got along. But of course, it could have been a problem. I spent many meetings concerned, well, what if an issue arises about who can vote on this motion? Or are all our motions to be passed if they have 50% majority? Do any of them require anything further? And a person speak twice on the same motion if they wish to? Again, never a problem. We always worked it out. But it very much could have been a problem had we had, say, a difficult board member, or if a guest had attended who felt things were being done improperly and had challenged us to point to what allowed us to proceed a certain way, well, we wouldn't have had a clear answer. And I see Robin is on this call. I do apologize and want to stress that there seemed to be no ill effects. Things went fine. But I'm sure you can imagine how, at least in a bigger group, such as a world conference or perhaps an annual general meeting for a member organization where plenty of people attend and plenty of people may want the right to speak or may expect to vote, how it is very helpful to have sort of defined procedures that set out the rules of who can vote and when, how long someone can speak, how often they can speak, because they can really help prevent problems that could arise.
Y otro ejemplo que les queríamos traer esta tarde era acerca de la implementación de las reglas de procedimiento en la Asociación Guías Argentinas. Realmente queríamos que, antes de pasar a las preguntas, que esta sesión sea una sesión útil, y por eso queríamos también contar experiencias de aplicación de las reglas de procedimiento en nuestras propias organizaciones miembros, en otras instancias de gobernanza que no son la Conferencia Mundial. En la Argentina implementamos las reglas de procedimiento por primera vez en el año 2019, implementamos también un equipo de procedimientos que trabajó dentro de la Asamblea y fue ratificado dentro de la Asamblea Nacional de la Asociación Guías Argentinas, y ante la pandemia decretada por el COVID-19, como muchas de nosotras en todas nuestras organizaciones, tuvimos que rever y asegurar, entre otras tantas cosas, el funcionamiento de nuestra gobernanza y cómo seguiríamos tomando decisiones importantes en ese momento tan crítico que estábamos pasando y que todavía algunas estamos transitando. Lo que hicimos fue revisar esas reglas de procedimientos que fueron enviadas en el 2019 para adaptarlas completamente de una asamblea presencial a una asamblea completamente virtual que fue realizada en el año 2020. Estas reglas gestionaron y en concordancia y en absoluta armonía con nuestro reglamento interno y nuestro estatuto, hicieron que la asamblea virtual, por primera vez en la Asociación Guías Argentinas, que fue algo completamente atípico, como ha pasado en muchas organizaciones miembros, genere una herramienta de toma de decisiones donde todos sabíamos qué iba a suceder y de qué forma iba a suceder este evento tan atípico. Este año vamos a seguir implementando nuestras reglas de procedimiento, ni presenciales ni virtuales, sino que para las asambleas de zona, en esta instancia regional, las comunidades guías en todo el país, en toda la Argentina, van a tener la posibilidad de evaluar su condición epidemiológica y en función de eso poder hacer una parte presencial o hacerla completamente virtual a la conferencia, a la asamblea, y todo esto está contenido dentro de las reglas de procedimiento. También trabajamos con algunos países de la región para compartir esta buena práctica, y pensamos en compartir estos ejemplos en lo que comentaba Amy, y en este caso particular de la Asociación Guías Argentinas, en facilitar y familiarizarnos con las reglas de procedimiento como una herramienta que está a nuestra disposición y que usamos en la conferencia mundial, pero que también es completamente adaptable y utilizable en nuestras organizaciones miembros justamente para ayudarnos en la toma de decisiones, y más en momentos como este que quizás todavía tengamos que seguir haciendo nuestras asambleas nacionales o zonales de forma virtual, y es algo que realmente es útil, y bueno, también pueden contactarnos por cualquier consulta o duda de este material, porque realmente es algo que seríamos felices de compartir, ya lo hemos hecho incluso, como una buena práctica dentro de nuestras organizaciones miembros.
So at this point, do any of you have any questions you'd like us to address? We can try. If you do, I suppose you're muted. So is that, Cindy Ann, something you can control?
Definitely. So if you do raise your hand, indicate in the chat. So we do see that we have Robin of Girl Guides Canada speaking in English with a question.
Hello. So I just wanted to make sure that I had clarity on the for, the against, and the abstain, and then the required numbers. So I understand the majorities, the simple majority, but I just wanted to throw an example out to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. So using just simple numbers, if we have 150 countries are represented, 30 votes are to abstain, that only leaves 120 votes that will be counted, and therefore at 75%, that would require 90 to vote in favor. So am I understanding that correctly, that those 30 votes to abstain would not be counted, and we would be looking at 120 as the number on which that 75% majority, or the 60 would be for simple majority, or 61, I suppose, would be necessary. Is that correct, my understanding?
I can address this, and yes, this time around it is. I think it's been done differently at past conferences, but that is the plan this time around. In part because we anticipate, we know at the general meeting in December, some organizations had difficulty voting, so they weren't able to, and it caused a little bit of chaos with our numbers. So this time around, an abstention is going to essentially equal no vote.
Great, thank you.
We also have Gabriela from Argentina speaking in Spanish, en español.
Sí, buenas tardes. Hace un momento, cuando Candela comentó cómo era la votación para los futuras miembros, dijo que entraban a formar parte del Consejo Mundial las 6 primeras personas, y la número 7 y la 8 que se llamaban aprobadas. Yo quiero saber qué significa eso de aprobadas, cuál es la función de la número 7 y de la número 8. Gracias.
I can go if you want, Amy. La número 7 y la número 8 significa que las 6 primeras son integrantes del Consejo Mundial, y las personas número 7 y 8, son aquellas personas que van a reemplazar y que van a ingresar al Consejo Mundial en caso de que de esas 6 personas, de la composición total del Consejo Mundial, haya personas que, por las causas que establece nuestro estatuto, no puedan seguir en sus funciones, y estas personas, la número 7 y la número 8, son 2 personas en esta posición, entrarían en su reemplazo eventualmente a lo largo del trienio. Luego, en la próxima votación del Consejo Mundial, serán otras las nuevas personas aprobadas, y ya esas personas aprobadas, hayan entrado o no hayan entrado y sean parte del Consejo Mundial, ya se vence o se termina ese plazo de aprobación por parte del Consejo Mundial y de la conferencia en este caso.
Thank you both for your questions and your responses. Do we have any more questions coming in? I do not see any on the chat, but oh yes, I do.
Irma,
So I have Miriam.
de Honduras. Como también comentaron en relación al asunto, las normas para realizar las reuniones.
1 minute,
Yo creo que
sorry.
realmente todas las organizaciones.
I'm hearing someone speaking. Who is speaking?
Yo, Irma Yolanda de Honduras. Sí,
Okay,
lo
Irma,
que yo decía,
Yolanda, I did not see your hand, but I will let you ask your question and then we will have a question from Miriam, okay? Go ahead.
bien, lo que yo quiero es comentar. En todas las organizaciones estamos introduciendo miembros jóvenes para los comités y las normas existen. Lo que tenemos que hacer es socializarlas, porque a veces tenemos documentos guardados en los archivos de nuestras asociaciones que ahí están y las jóvenes no les hacen caso porque ahora la vida se maneja de manera diferente. Pero recordemos que dentro de nuestra organización hay normas que están escritas porque así lo exige también la Asociación Mundial. Entonces, esos miembros de relevo que entran a los comités deben de sentarse un tiempo a estudiar todo lo que es nuestra organización desde personería jurídica y todo lo que es organización y reglamento. Gracias.
Thank you for your comment, Irma. Miriam?
Yes, good afternoon all, and thanks much for having this session so that we can get acquainted with the rules of procedure. I have a follow-up question on the number 7 and 8. So is it that after the required votes have been obtained by 6 members, how are the 7th and the 8th? With what numbers are they? Is it that they follow the numbers after the 6? So after the 6 have the required majority, and I think it says here, simple majority of votes cast. So would it then be the following 7 and 8 would be the numbers that, you know, I'm a little bit unclear as to how, you know, what the numbers are required for the 7th and the 8th. That's one. And I think also in furtherance to the question from Canada, I think, Robin, will it be announced what would be the required majority? I would assume after the votes have been casted and when the results are announced. So it would then be, because it has to be clear for everyone voting that, you know, it's 120 votes and the required majority is X, and this person or this decision has received X amount of votes. So I would assume that this information will be communicated to the conference so that everyone knows, you know, what the numbers are, what the required majority is, so that there's no, you know, because if I vote, I don't know who's voting with me. It's like a voting is secret, but still for the results to be announced, that all the information would also be announced after the voting. Thank you.
Hi, Miriam. With respect to your first question about the election of the World Board, the election has been done various ways over the years, but this time what's happening is that there will, in theory at least, only be one round of voting. So each organization casts its vote for up to 6 people, and the highest scoring 6 candidates, as long as there are no ties, there are clearly 6 highest scoring candidates, those will be the 6 elected to the World Board. So they don't need to get a particular majority. If there's a tie for the last spot, then there will be another round of voting between the 2 people who tied. So essentially what will happen is the top 6 people will be elected, and then the 7th and 8th place people will be considered approved persons who can remain on deck to fill spots on the board in an emergency type of situation. And the same thing is true there. If there is a tie between the 8th place people, if it's not clear who the last approved person is, there will be a vote between the 2 tied people to determine which of those gets more votes and moves into the 8th place spot. And then there will be one overall vote at the end, just by simple majority, to ratify the 6 new members of the World Board and the 2 approved persons. And with respect to announcing the required majority for each vote, I don't actually know if that's the plan, but it sounds like a good idea. It could help get rid of any sort of confusion over why the result is the way it is. So I will certainly recommend that and see if we can make that happen.
Thank you for your question, Miriam, and for your responses. Any other questions? I think these are really good questions to help clarify what will be happening during World Conference Week, and I look forward to hearing more of your questions. Anything that you're thinking or you're not sure about, this is the moment to ask, right? Don't think that maybe you shouldn't ask, or maybe, you know, it's something you should know, so maybe you're shy to ask. Just ask, because it may be that someone else has a similar query or you know, not clear on something, and it will really help everyone to become clearer on the rules going into World Conference Week. So any questions, any more questions? So we have one more from Miriam. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was trying to lower my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Anyone else?
Puedo agregar una regla, quizás memotécnica, para que sepamos a la hora de votar, sepan que del booklet de todas las mociones que van desde la 1 a la número 10 son mociones que afectan nuestra Constitución y votamos los miembros plenos, y esas mociones son aprobadas con el 75% de los votos, y de la número 11 a la número 23, esas mociones no van a afectar nuestro reglamento y nuestro estatuto, y van a pasar con el voto de mayoría simple de todos los miembros, tanto asociados como miembro pleno. Es una simple regla memotécnica. Incluso en el booklet están separados, y en la primera hoja están del 1 al 10, y en la segunda hoja de la 11 a la 23, quizás como para clarificar, pero es una buena aclaración que obviamente esté previa a la votación. En otras conferencias siempre se dice, obviamente, qué moción se va a votar, con qué mayoría y quiénes son las delegaciones que votan, si es para miembro pleno o es para miembros plenos y miembros asociados.
Thank you for that addition. Amy, anything you'd like to add at this
I don't
point?
think so. Maybe just to say that if you have any questions, you can use the email that for the procedural team at wags.org. There it is. And send them in advance of the conference, and we'll email you back.
I would like
And that deadline does not apply to questions. You can ask questions at any point.
I see a hand. Valencia, you may unmute. first hit on mute.
Last year, we had given the information pack for member organization for Uganda conference. Is that still being used this year?
I believe an updated version has been circulated. It's very similar, but it's been updated with new dates, some new motions that hadn't been made at that point. So keep an eye out for that. You should have one. It looks similar, so
yeah. Okay.
What
happened? I printed the last year's information. So what I should do, maybe just discard it. All right. Thank you.
And that's a good question and response, that while it may be similar, there has been some changes to suit the current structure and the way in which the conference will be delivered. So it is very important that we become familiar with this updated version of the rules. Yeah. Amy, can you clarify very quickly, is July 27th, I know you would have mentioned at the beginning some information around deadlines for motions and amendments, but is the July 27th date the deadline or the last day that any amendment can be submitted, or will there be any timeline for submitting amendments after that?
I would have to actually look at the conference schedule to be sure, but I can tell you that my understanding is that amendments will still be able to be made sort of during the discussion on the motions when they start out. It's just that if those discussions take place after 3 p.m. UTC on July 27th, then I think organizations will still be free to make them. It's just that if you know in advance that you're planning to do this, it would be very helpful if you would let the procedural team know by 3 p.m. UTC on July 27th, because there are slides that will have to be changed. The various speakers will have to be informed. And it just, because it's online, it takes a little bit more time to adapt than it would in person. So that does not necessarily have to be a hard and fast deadline, but we would like a heads up. If it's after that, it will be a bit harder to arrange.
Thank you for that clarification. So we are coming up on just about 7 minutes before the end of our hour. And if there's any thoughts, any questions, I know we did give member organizations the opportunity to submit questions prior to today. So Candela, Amy, if you had any questions that you really wanted to address, we can go ahead and speak to those as we wrap up today's session.
Gracias por su tiempo. El equipo de procedimientos está a completa disposición. También sepan que el equipo de procedimientos las va a estar acompañando en las enmiendas que surjan en ese momento, y que disfrutemos también que estamos ante un momento histórico, y quizás como conclusión también ver en estas reglas una nueva herramienta que podemos incluir dentro de nuestras organizaciones miembro para prácticas generales, de reuniones generales que tengamos, o asambleas o diferentes procesos de toma de decisiones para fortalecer nuestra gobernanza. Muchas gracias por las preguntas, y estoy segura que el equipo de procedimientos va a saber y estará feliz de recibir sus consultas. Y nos vemos en otro café o en la conferencia.
Yes, please send them along, that's fine. And especially if you think you will be raising new motions or amendments. I'm a little bit concerned that I that deadline we spoke of the 27th of July may have been specially designed with the conference schedule in mind. I would have to go look at it to be sure. So that may be, well, I can't give a solid answer on whether that is the deadline. So at this point, so please, if there is any chance that you see yourself suggesting a motion or amendment, please let us know by then, even if you're not sure yet, even if you think you might have a late breaking amendment or a motion that you're considering, please do let us know by that date and time, and we'll do what we can to make it happen for you. And any questions, just send them along.
Thank you both, and definitely I would echo that we aim for the 27th at least, right, and not after, so that we're ahead of the 27th. And if anything, then we think of that as bonus time, so that we at least go in prepared with these motions or amendments for discussion. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, I think it might actually be difficult to accommodate them afterwards, so please let us know.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Candela. Thank you both for hosting the discussion today and sharing the experiences of your member organization as a way to encourage this best practice with member organizations, and really to enlighten us on the value of understanding rules of procedures as we go into these meetings, so that we can fully participate, so that we can appreciate what is happening in the moment and really get our voices heard at the moment that we need to. I want to thank all member organizations for joining us today. As I said, this is one of the final ones from the Western Hemisphere, but next weekend, we still have more sessions in preparation for World Conference. There will be World Conference planning team will be introducing all of the candidates in a session on the 18th. We also have another session on voting. So you would have seen Amy share with us how to vote. You will actually have the opportunity to practice that and make sure that you are able to submit your vote at an upcoming session in the next week, and look out for the correspondence on that. So we really are happy that you took the time to participate in the sessions throughout this past 2 months, so that we can all be ready to take our movements to the next level and be able to really make decisions that will benefit the girls and young women across the world. Thank you again. Have a good one, everyone. Wait, no, we have to stop for photos. You know, that's definitely something we have to do. All right, so let's see. Yes, I'm typically very slow when it comes to that part, so you have to be very patient with me.
Indiana, would you like me to help with the photo?
Yes, Steph.
Yes. Hi, everyone. If you would like to be part of our photo, please activate your camera. If you would prefer not to, feel free to leave your camera off. I'm right now only showing participants whose video cameras are on. And please adopt, yes, exactly, Gabriella, adopt the pose of the hemisphere, which is our bicep, to show that we are stronger together. I'll take a couple of photos. I ask you hold this pose for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Amazing. Let's give each other a virtual high five.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you again, everyone. I really am grateful for your continued participation in all our sessions. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.